The comparison and contrast essay. This week, you're going to finish up your essay comparing or contrasting Sonny's Blues and the Rich Brother. You do not necessarily have to do both. In other words, you can just talk about the similarities between the two older brothers or the differences. You can also talk about the setting, characterization, and symbolism in each of the stories and how they are either different or they are similar. I've given you as much latitude as I possibly can with this. I think where students get in, they have a problem is when they try to do both. So I'm trying to simplify it by having you just choose one or the other. Exploring similarities and differences. Make comparisons. Ideas to consider. The older brothers and the rich brothers and Sonny's Blues struggle to understand their younger brothers. Now, what's the differences between the two? Or what are the similarities between the two? Which one seems more successful? Compare the two successes of the different brothers and why. Both younger brothers in these stories seem to march to different drummers. How would you describe their similarities or their differences? I've given some information about how to write a comparison and contrast essay. Make sure you identify the subjects being compared and tell the purpose of the comparison. And in the conclusion, and this is a Venn diagram that you could use, and I suggest that you might want to use in preparation for the final writing. Conclusion, restate the main idea or draw conclusions. I'll give you some ideas about what I'll be looking for in this rubric. So you may want to take a look at that. Carefully consider the two or more texts you're being asked to write about. You can't write a good compare and contrast essay without first reading what you've been assigned. So you might want to take notes as you're reading it, both stories. Make a list of the key similarities and differences in your text. Once you've read everything you have to drop a list of how those works are similar or different to each other. Isolate the most important points and turn them into your central argument. Do not forget you still have a thesis in this paper, so it has to be the last sentence of the first paragraph. Write an outline that might help you to decide what to emphasize in your paper, and also gives you the chronology or the sequence of the paper. Fill in textual details. Now, one of the things you're going to want to do is make sure you use the text as evidence. Therefore, you need to actually quote parts of the text that supports your argument. Again, exploring the similarities and differences of your subject. Decide which features to compare and contrast. I should say or. So you want to just choose one or the other. You can't do it one way. This is another way of actually organizing your thoughts. You could do it by subject. In other words, you could do it by the different stories, or you could do it by the features. You could talk about characterization in the stories and how those are different or similar. Drafting. You could read this by simply getting your thoughts on paper. Just write. Don't edit as you write. It's much easier. I shouldn't say easier. It's better for you just to write and then to come back and weed out basically the extraneous verbiage that you don't need. Use transitional words. Now this is important because this is a different type of essay. So the transitional words are in the same way also, both and similarly, yet while on the other hand in contrast and however. And then also when you talk about parallelism, or when I do talk about parallelism, I mean if you're going to basically write one paragraph about one of the subjects, make sure you write another paragraph. In other words, just don't write 2 sentences about one of the subjects and then 10 sentences about the other one. So you have to have a parallel. This is the comparing or contrasting essay.